Start with Brian Kelly and his updates from the SEC teleconference. I wouldn't call anything super informative, but just some thoughts on what he gave. And Jeremy, I'll get your comments on them. Jack Besh, quote unquote, was out there practicing yesterday. So we'll see if Jack can go on Saturday. Armani Goodwin did also practice yesterday, and Brian Kelly said they would just kind of see how he felt. Look, you got a bye week coming, so I realize you want to win every game, and those guys are important pieces to your team, but it is also attractive to look at the bye week and go, well, you didn't play this week, and if you're kind of back counting to yesterday, 3 additional weeks to get ready, that seems like it is one that would make a lot of sense, and certainly does for Major Burns, who has worked some scout team for LSU, but he is on track for Alabama, as Brian Kelly said. So those were the significant injury reports as of today.
Yeah, definitely. Just seems like Besh this season just been battling the injury bug since training camp and fall camp, and just hadn't been that full healthy version of himself that we kind of saw from his freshman year. So I think for right now, it's the best thing for him to kind of take his time, get back in this receiving corps, especially this version of JD5. I think he could definitely use a guy like Jack Besh in the slot, but I think Major Burns is a low-key underrated player for this defense, especially early on in the season. Just you weren't seeing those big plays over the top with the safeties kind of getting burned deep, and obviously we know about that missed tackle against Mississippi State, but other than that, I think he's been playing just phenomenal football all season for the Tigers. So I think in that Alabama game, that's definitely a piece when you're thinking about Bryce Young and that passing attack. That's definitely a piece you could definitely use getting back.
Had a fair amount of depth in the secondary, and when Burns goes down, Fouché was ready to go, so off the 4-gamer, so he could come in, and you've had Brooks out there, and we know Jay Ward's played, so you were okay there. And then especially, obviously, a receiver, you got loads of depth. But as you were saying, like you see Jayden Daniels kind of emerge against Florida, and you're Jack Besh going, well, all right, I need to get out there with this now. Like, this is a lot better. And you know that Jack wants to play based on the muffed punt and then coming out of the game. It's just not the way he would have imagined his sophomore season going. As a freshman, he was so productive, so consistent, made some big plays, was a really big piece of what they were trying to do with a lot of injuries on the wide receiving core. And you figure as a sophomore, it's time to kind of take a leadership role. He goes to SEC Media Days. He's kind of a focal piece to what they were doing. He gets hurt before fall camp, sits out a little bit early, and it just hasn't gotten on track for him. And you know he can produce and wants to, but it's just frustrating at this point.
Yeah, it's super frustrating. I think anytime you're the second leading receiver behind Kayshawn as a freshman, that's extremely impressive. And we know just the kind of the worker that Jack is. He's got to go in that building every single day and work his tail off. And I'm sure when he, committed to LSU, he probably didn't think he was going to be the kick returner or the punt returner, but next man up, and he was ready to go take that charge as well and do that. So you can only, wish healthiness back on him and try to get him back in this lineup because – I know the pass catcher that he is, and if you give him targets, he's going to catch those balls. So hopefully he can get back healthy as soon as possible.
And the other thing that I pulled from the teleconference today was I love when coaches, it usually happens for baseball guys, but Will Wade was really good about it as well. And sometimes you get it on the football side, but not as often. You get a stat that I wouldn't know how to look this up. I think Hester may have it on Pro Football Focus or something. Like I don't know how to look this up, but Brian, or I guess you go back and look at every play of every game, which would take a substantial amount of time. Brian Thomas and Jayden Jenkins are the team leaders in targets to receptions. Both of them are catching about 80% of the balls headed their way. And, there are plenty of 4-star players that show up in Baton Rouge that get buried on the depth chart and end up not helping. I say this all the time on signing day, like, yeah, it looks great that you sign these 25 guys, but half of them are never really going to help. That's really the reality of the situation in college football. And with Brian Thomas, he comes in, and you look around, and you go, well, this is a wide receiver room with Kayshawn Boutte and with Jack Besh. He comes into the class with Jack Besh and Chris Hilton and Deion Smith, and Jayden Jenkins is already there, and you've got Kayshawn Boutte. Like, it's just a really crowded room to try to break into. Trey Palmer's there, and all of a sudden, you look at him and go, well, I think he's pretty talented. The tape's really good. And you go out to practice, and he's making, like, jumping catches in the end zone. It looks pretty salty, but it's like, I wonder if it's ever going to, if he's going to materialize, or maybe he'll be one of those guys that kind of gets pushed aside. And it's really been good over the last month to see him make some plays after the catch, to go up and make big plays in the Florida game the way that he did. And now instead of is he ever going to break through, you're thinking, man, this guy's a force on this team, and certainly next year is going to be a big piece to what they do on offense. It's been an emergence for him that wasn't necessarily there last year in his first year on campus.
Yeah, I mean, you and I saw it firsthand. Like, we went out there and you're like, wait, that guy's has a little different. He's a little different from these other guys. It wasn't like he wasn't running a 4.25 or anything like that, but you could just tell he was a playmaker. And those type of guys, it's hard to keep those guys off the field, and it's hard to show, their ability from a Saturday perspective. And I thought, the more reps he got, obviously the more confidence he got out there, and I think now he's definitely a staple in this receiving core. Like, I think him and Jayden's, their rapport between each other is really probably the highest on the team that I've seen all season. And I think that's something you're going to continue to see. And I think, going towards next year, I think he's definitely going to be the #1 receiver and a guy that, can easily go over 1,000 yards and kind of have one of those big-time receiver seasons we've seen in LSU history. So I'm excited for him, especially I'm going to keep talking about this version of JD5. I think you can kind of just
That's
get
the story. I mean, that'll be the first thing we talk about on Monday. And what we talk about post-game on our show and y'all's, we'll know. I mean, we won't know, but you could make a huge step this week if he throws for 325 and 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what everyone's kind of saying. Like, yeah, he did it for one game, but can we see it again? And that's a great point, especially when you kind of look at that Tennessee game. You look at that second half of that Auburn game. It's like, okay, this is the version that you can see that Coach Kelly probably saw at practice. They saw during fall camp, and, like, they need to get this version out of him. If he can continue to, replicate that and do it again in a big-time Saturday game against a ranked opponent, then now the future starts getting, now the sunshine and rainbow starts getting pumped a lot harder than we've kind of seen in recent memory. So, yeah, I'm excited for Jayden. I think he's kind of, really taking control of this offense. He looks a lot more comfortable back there. And obviously we know he's not going to turn the ball over. If you mix all those things together, you could really have a dangerous passing attack.
It changed the discussion on Saturday from, he's safe with the ball. I'm hand up. I said, like, how bad would it have to go for them to try to go to Nussmeier to get the ball down the field? Like that, it changes the discussion from that to, wow, look at the ceiling on this guy. If he can go on the road in the swamp, Florida, bad defense or not, it's on the road in a hostile SEC environment, throw for over 300, not turn the ball over, thanks to a little bit of roughing passer call, and he's beating linebackers and defensive ends to the corner for touchdown runs. Like, this becomes a whole new dimension of what they can do on offense, and Garrett Nussmeier can't do that, and Miles Brennan couldn't do that, and Walker Howard doesn't have that. They can't outrun Florida edge defenders to the pylon. Like, that's not in their game. So all of a sudden, again, it goes from safe guy, a lot of starts to, whoa, look what he actually can do.
Yeah, no, it literally happened overnight because, you've kind of seen sprinkles of it. You saw that, the deep pass to Malik in that Mississippi State game. You kind of saw him try to take a deep shot to Kayshawn in that Florida State game, but really doing it for a game and making big-time throws, you just haven't seen it. And to me, he was doing what I've kind of been asking to do, on time, on target. And, that ball to Cole Taylor, that was an NFL type of throw, just fitting the ball in there as soon as he turns his head around and he's not waiting until someone's wide open. Those are the kind of things you expect from a quarterback that's been in college football for 4 seasons. It seems like he's kind of gotten a hold of this offense. And if you have a guy that can use the legs to the level that JD5 can and also not turn it over, you're going to score a lot of points and really be moving up and down the field, especially if you can get the run game going too. So, yeah, I'm excited to see how they perform on Saturday because that's I think, going to be the real answer to see, like, was that a fluke against Florida's bad defense, or is this the kind of version we're going to see from him going forward?
It's the storylines have been fairly predictable in terms of, what we're probably going to be talking about next. And, could they get better from Florida State to Mississippi State? And then they did. And then, you don't look very good on the plains at Auburn. And then you feel like you got a reasonable chance against Tennessee at home, and you play very poorly. Like, well, this team's still got a lot of lumps to take. And then you go to Florida and you do what you do, and the roller coaster continues to go up and down for this LSU team. Hopefully stays chinning up here on Saturday as LSU welcomes in Ole Miss for a 2:30 kickoff.
Thanks so much for watching Hunt Hill on YouTube.
Now do us a favor. Hit the red subscribe button below and throw us a like. We'll see you next time.